Alright, so we are now live and welcome to Usapang Musiko Season 2. So for today's episode, we will be talking about pedagogy and performance and how these two things are intertwined and how different they are. No? This is especially important to a lot of musicians for them to understand the difference and the things that they need to learn and understand about these two concepts. So this episode is brought to you by Anchor. So if you're new to the channel, you can also check out my other videos on YouTube. Links are down in the description box below. So let's get to the main topic. So let's first focus on what pedagogy is and what performance is. No, basically pedagogy is the what I like to call the art of teaching. No, so how do you make your students learn? How do they understand the concepts? How they could basically absorb, or how can you transfer your knowledge as a teacher to your students? And then performance is sort of a teaching tool as well, no? For me, it's expressing yourself to others, to convey emotions, to convey your ideas, no? It's like it's an indirect way of teaching others, while pedagogy is mainly the direct manner in which you teach people, no? So basically these two things are like the more mainstream form of actually getting work as a musician, is to perform and to teach, no? They ingrain this in school, especially, no? When you study in music school. uh, Other things can be arranging, no? Work that are behind the scenes, like uh, producing your own music, diba? Those things are also part of what career paths you can take. But mainly, if you talk about music, no, the first thing that comes into the mind of people is about becoming a teacher or a pedagogue and becoming a performer. So these are two things that come into mind when you talk about this, because as a professor of mine also told me, diba, you're not, as a musician, you're not always gonna be performing. And right now, when the pandemic struck, a lot of performers lost their jobs, right? Because of the problems that we had to face regarding the number of people allowed to go outside and everything else in between. Now, a lot of those performers clinged into teaching or pedagogy, no, to at least earn themselves a living or to survive. No, some of those people who had so many concerts going on even abroad, no, I'm not just talking about the scene here in the Philippines. I'm talking about concert artists abroad, no, because I had a chance to have lessons with some virtuoso violinists from across the globe because of this time, no. I had the opportunity that because of their free schedules, they were able to accommodate lessons now, no. Of course, it's not cheap, but it was all worth it, no. So it's something you can cling on to, no. So it's important that we also understand how we can teach, because music is never just the performance side. It's also always a lot of aspects in between, no. Even arranging and, you know, producing whatever line of work you are in music that's not performing and teaching, no, they're all part of that industry. But again, teaching is a very noble act still. I mean, everything we do. But we have to also talk about how some people are good teachers but not that great of performers, and how some performers aren't really good teachers, no? Because I've talked to a lot of my colleagues, my friends that are also in the industry, and some of them don't want to teach because they are afraid that they might not deliver into expectations, but they are good musicians. They are great musicians, but it's not in their minds to teach because it's also a special skill, or you have to develop certain skills as well, because learning and teaching are two things that you need to understand, diba? How can you teach something you don't really understand or know? Because also there are times where performers are made to perform only, no? Because it's just, let's say they have the skills, but they have so much talent in them that they can't really share this, because talent is something you're born with, no? So talent is something you can't really give to other people. And even though they have the skills, but they can't really share enough, I think that's what they feel, no? They feel the frustration that, oh, but why does my student not perform as well as me, no? Sometimes it gets to them, especially for those super talented musicians, no? Their patience is tested, no? Because in teaching you need a lot of patience, not just in performing, because in performing you just have yourself accountable in everything that you're doing, diba? Because your results will show in what you're doing. But in teaching, you're also accountable for what your student is doing, diba? You can't just blame the student, oh, because you didn't do this, this is what happened, no? So it's not like that, because as a teacher, your goal is to guide your student to be better, diba? I always say that the teacher is 10% of the work and the student needs to do 90%, no? It's a big discrepancy of load. But that 10%, the quality of that teacher gives will drastically affect the 90% effort that the student needs to have in order for him or her to grow. So it's really about that accountability and the patience that you need to develop, no? Of course, there are also great performers who are also great teachers. We've seen that in the course of history. They wrote books. The books that we study right now were written by not just great teachers, but also great musicians and performers as well. But some people really can't teach, no? Because it's an art. There is also this thing that they say, experience is the best teacher. But in music, how can you teach that experience? It's a different thing, no? I mean, you need to experience certain things in order for you to do them. And I always say that you need to be human in order for you to develop better as a musician, which means you need a lot of experience. But in order to gain those skills, to share that experience to your audience, you need a great teacher. Okay. And how do you know if your teacher is not really great but knows what you're doing? Is that your teacher can troubleshoot your problems easily, no? So it's not about, oh, if the person that's teaching you is so good, no, but can't really find ways for you to get around your problems in technique or music in general, no, that won't work, because you need a teacher that is fit for you, that can answer your questions or your queries, or can work around the problems that you have. And that's another art, no? It's really an art form. Finding ways to troubleshoot many problems, because as a student-teacher's relationship, no, it's different from a performer and audience relationship. But there's also this relationship that you need to work on, because The performer's only goal is to convey his idea and emotion to the audience, diba? And the audience will be the one to process it on his or her own. But the way the audience should process it doesn't affect the performer in any way. Because it's for the audience only, no? How the performance made him or her feel is important to him, but not to the performer. Because the performer just gave this idea, and now you can interpret it in any way that you want. But when it comes to being a pedagogue, the knowledge that you pass to your students needs to be the same, no? You should be thinking the same way. You should be processing it at the same rate or at the same time, and you should be able to get the results that you want. So it's more linear when you're teaching, and in performing it can go anywhere, no? And that's important to take note, especially for those teaching, no? That the performance of your student is part of the quality that you give, the guidance that you give to them. So that's important to note. And also, here's the thing, no? There are a lot of performers who can't teach because they didn't really study music in a way. So how can you teach something you don't really fully know, no? Because some performers are only performing because they know how to play the instrument. But you can't really teach that way, diba? You have to have a deeper understanding of the music, not just the performance side. You have to understand theory. Some people don't know these things, diba? The standard note reading, sight singing, those basic skills that is needed for a musician. I mean, it's not making them less of a musician, but it is the point at which you can say that they won't be able to teach you or teach a student well enough in that sort of field, no? If they don't understand the basics of music theory or something like that, no? If they can only perform. So those are the things that we should consider in if you want to teach, no? And if you want to perform. So both paths are different, no? You can be both. You can do both, be a performer and a pedagogue at the same time. But it's gonna be hard to process for some people. So that's why you can't just do both at the same time if you're not mastering the basic foundations of each, no? Because performance is a little bit more individualistic in a way, diba? It's like if you're comparing introverts and extroverts, no? So as a performer, you can be by yourself, but as a teacher, you have to socialize more. You have to have that relationship with your student, and it's not easy, no? It's not easy. Both paths are not easy anyway. But it's an important thing to note that if you want to teach, you have to learn the basics of teaching. And if you want to perform, you have to learn the basics of performance as well. It's not just about playing. The connection you build with the audience, diba? As a performer, it's also part of that. The way that your body is moving is also part of performance, no? There's also a science behind it. The way you project your tone, the way you convey your emotions, no? Not just in your playing, but in your body language, your facial expression. Especially for singers, no? There's a lot more nuances that's happening. The diction that they need, the facial expression, the movements of the body. So there's also things that performers do that is not really seen as the job of a pedagogue, no? But of course, as a musician, if you can do both, it's better economically, di ba? you have the chance, as as I've told you earlier, no, a lot of performance venues closed down, so a lot of those performers go to teaching. But those who can't, you don't understand the music well enough, but are performing, can't do the same. But they can teach because who will be their students if they themselves don't know how to understand these things. So it's really important, but it's not really a loss if you're a musician who can't teach, because maybe that's not for you. And if you're a musician who teaches but not perform as well, it's also not a loss, no. We all have our own paths to go into, no. Not all teachers naman can be great performers. I mean, everyone can perform, no? It's a given. But not all teachers are great performers, and it doesn't mean that they are a lesser musician. It's just that maybe they're better off in teaching, no? We can't really compare apples to oranges, diba? Because again, these two paths are fairly different and the same at the same time. Because of course, the concepts are the same, but the process is different, diba? Practicing versus teaching, no? Because a performer just needs to practice, the teacher needs to assess before doing anything for their students, diba? It takes two different tasks, two different processes in order to perform well on both, no? Some can do both, and some are really good at both, and some are not, no? Because another thing is communication, no? If you're not good with communicating, especially right now, no, it's a hard time for teachers, for music teachers, especially applied music, no? Like me, I'm a violin teacher, and those who are also teaching both strings, because the movements that you need are not natural. So how can you convey that to someone who doesn't even know that the wrist move this way, or that there is a left and right movement of the wrist, no? How can you just say what they need to do if they haven't experienced it yet? So verbal communication is super key right now, because you can't touch your student because of the precautions that we need to observe. We need to keep social distancing, and of course, because it's all online, no? So you have to have this keen eye to spotting out different things that are happening, and then you have to spot it, and then you have to explain in a way that they can understand, especially for young children, no? If you're teaching like 5th graders, 6th graders, or if you're teaching 4 or 5 year olds, no, it's gonna be a different words. You're gonna use different words. You're gonna use different sentence constructions for them to understand it better than teaching, let's say, a 20-year-old or a 15-year-old. So you have to be careful with how you convey your statements, because it's the only thing that you have right now, verbal communication, no? Of course, you can show it visually, diba? But for them to really understand these things, you have to direct them through words, no? Because sometimes it's easier to just get the hand of your student and make them go into the direction that it needs to go, diba? It's easier, but we don't have that luxury right now. So again, this is another art form, diba? Also performers, no? You had to adjust. Online performances needs a lot of troubleshooting with like the audio and video, no? You have to edit stuff out, no? Not just perform anymore, no? A lot of performers became their own producers. And it's really something that is just part of the times that we have right now. So I guess everyone needs to adjust on what they are doing, no? Not just musicians in general, but everyone. But because people see our work as something non-essential, we are a big chunk of those people who are affected. Yeah. So, to cap off this episode, no? So, teaching and performing may be different, but if you can adapt to these two things, you can be successful at both. You don't have to really choose. But if you need to choose one, choose what's best for you, what's best fit for you. If you're really good with children, or if you're really good at conveying instructions, I think teaching will be good, no? And if you're good at conveying emotions, you can be a good performer as well. But it's not I'm a good teacher and I'm a bad performer, and I'm a bad teacher or a good performer. No, it's not always like that. Sometimes it does come to that point where you don't really want to teach or you don't want to really perform. But of course, you can always go into the middle of mastering two things. No, as humans, not just musicians, we have the capacity to do great things, and we can do it. No, we just have to put our minds and our bodies into it. So if you want to be a good performer, you want to be a good teacher, you can be both. And that ends our episode of Usapang Musiko Season 2. This is our 5th episode. If you want to be a guest, please do comment down below, and or message me on my socials. Follow me on my socials. Links all down in the description box. And also, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. We're almost at 850. So just a little bit more. Thanks for all the support. And again, this has been Usapang Musiko. I am Ryan Monakil, and I'll see you on the next one.